Brian here. Welcome to vlog number 21. Alright, so right now I'm on my way to Fullerton. I'm gonna stop and get some gas because this car eats gas like no tomorrow. But I'm gonna be shooting with somebody that I met on Instagram. He goes by JL Bangit. I don't know how to say it. He's gonna teach me how to say it once I meet him, so I know he's watching this. I'm sorry I butchered it, but we're gonna be shooting today. I'm hoping that I can get him some prints. We'll see kind of how the shoot goes. It should go really well. It's a nice kind of cooler day. It's not too hot. We're gonna go ahead and shoot in Fullerton. I'm gonna go ahead and get you guys some nice cinematics. And I'll see you guys on the other side. So enjoy. Some chill guys. Two brothers. One drives a BRZ. The other drives an STI 2021, the final edition. So it's pretty nice. It's nice shooting because he has a gray car, so a dark metallic gray like mine, so it's kind of easy to, at least I know the angles, I know the settings for the manual focus, or for the manual like apertures and shutter speeds and ISO, so it's nice to kind of just be able to it's nice to be able to just kind of shoot a familiar car. I think we got some pictures of us together, some pictures of us separate. I try to really, hook them up a little bit just because really the attention of me coming all the way down here. So this is Fullerton. This is about like an hour and a half away from where I live. But yeah, for the intention of me just getting down here and taking some pictures was just to help them, get some shots for their prints. And so yeah, it was nice. They're chill. It was chill meeting them. Just JL and his brother pretty much, and yeah, chill guys. Took him for a little joyride, a little joy spin. It's nice to kind of, like I said, it's nice to show people the car, get the external waist to crack open a little bit, get the turbo to spool. But yeah, now we're gonna go get some boba. I'll probably get some shots at the boba shop, and our cars together hopefully if we're parked up over there. But yeah, I'm excited for you guys to kind of see these. Alright, back again. So we're still on the same vlog, just a second day. So now I'm heading to a Cars and Coffee. It's the next morning. I didn't really film too much of the photography session. I kind of explained why. We were just running out of sunlight. But heading to a second Cars and Coffee, we're gonna hit up a nice spot. So you guys are gonna want to see that. And I'll go ahead and kind of film up a little bit of the Cars and Coffee. It should be pretty chill. I haven't had any coffee yet or any breakfast yet, so I'm hoping that I can kind of get that fixed. Regardless, I'm with my buddy Sal. He drives a white Type R with a big old wing and some nice T's. And he's a very good track driver. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and see you guys on the other side. And we're back. So that was the sequence. I didn't really record too much of our interactions just because this is my first time meeting people, and I feel like it's a little challenging just to kind of introduce people on camera. Maybe I just need to get more used to it. But here with the dogs. I think for this one, I'm gonna take you guys through. I think I'm gonna go through like a little tutorial. This is gonna be more of a tutorial video. So I'm gonna go through kind of the basics and the things that I do to, really set up properly, and go through some pictures with you guys. Just like core fundamentals of like photography in general, and like setup and things like that you should consider when taking pictures. And it's gonna kind of, if you guys follow all the kind of ideas and steps that I go through on a daily basis when I'm taking pictures, as long as you guys have like a very, not even like and you could even do these steps even on iPhone, really. Like there's just certain things, certain rules that I feel like a lot of people that don't really take photography classes really understand when it comes to photos and how to make like a very nice looking aesthetic photo. And so I'm not going to really get too deep into the editing process. If you guys aren't editing on Lightroom, that's what I use to edit. And if you guys are looking to make better edits, that's a video that I'll probably bring in the future. This is going to be more of like the basics, kind of like part one of like photo theory, almost in a way, just because like my background, I'm not a professional photographer. I did not earn any degrees in photography. I'm a college dropout, but I did take at least 8 classes of photography, and which is probably enough to earn like an associate's degree in this photography. But you know, I just didn't finish college. So I do have a lot of understanding of what a good photographer is. I have a good understanding of what good photos are. I have a good understanding of photo science and all of the theories that go behind photos, all the secret rules that kind of make a really great photo. And so I'm going to kind of cram it in, at least like the beginning parts, like the first 3 classes of photography you're probably ever going to take, into one little short video so you guys can kind of have a good understanding. And so here we'll kind of get into the pictures, and I kind of go through like what my thought process was when I took these pictures, and like how these rules kind of apply to the pictures in themselves. And you guys are going to kind of see them, and I'm going to run through like just, you know, basic ideas, and I'm going to go through pretty much the better of the photos that I took during these sessions, just because there's a lot to kind of get into. I took a lot of pictures. I was very busy for like the last 3 or 4 days just going to all of these sessions, and I traveled a good amount of distance. And for those that are looking to get their photos done by me or anyone, or looking just for nice spots to shoot, just give me a DM on Instagram. I'm always interested, especially if you're local to the area. I'm always interested to meet up with new people. I'm always interested to meet new people. I'm always interested to shoot. I'm always interested to kind of set those things up. So we'll kind of get into the first photo here. So we'll go over this photo. So this is a photo I took of my car. And basically like what you're gonna see here, and like what you need to understand is pretty much like everyone, you know, like the core basics of photography, right? Everyone always wants to shoot during sunset, and I always kind of prefer sunset. Sunset for me is like kind of shooting on easy mode. I could shoot on, you know, like sunset shouldn't limit you. Like you shouldn't just avoid a shoot throughout midday or the morning or any other time at night or anything. But sunset is always going to give you like peak lighting, sunset or sunrise, you know, whichever you prefer. I love to do both. I kind of prefer sunrise just because you kind of get the pinks that go into the gold versus the golds that go into the pinks, and that's just the way that the sun works, right? And so you kind of notice here that the lighting is pretty on point. And I shot this photo at ISO 500, which we'll get into kind of the understanding of what ISOs are for those that don't know, at 42 millimeter focal length, which is kind of the zoom on the lens. So I use a 24 to 120 zoom lens, so you kind of have a good range there. So I prefer to shoot that when I'm shooting. But if I want to get a very condensed, very zoomed in photo, I could zoom all the way to 120. If I want to get more of a wide angle, then I'll zoom all the way out to 42, you know, or even 24 if needed. I try not to really shoot too much in 24, but sometimes it's really called for. It just depends on what you're looking for. And then I'm at f6.3, 30th of a second shutter speed. And so set up, and what my thought process with choosing these settings, pretty much. So ISO 100 is going to be primarily just for midday, like noon to, you know, maybe like 1 or 2 o'clock. Pretty much like sun is at its peak strength. You want this, pretty much it just makes the sensor a little bit less sensitive to light, pretty much. And so it'll capture the photo perfectly, especially at the right shutter speed. ISO 100 is for like pretty much broad daylight. I'll go through the second session and you kind of see some examples of maybe like ISO 200 or 250, and those were shot at like 9:30 in the morning, where you're getting more harsh light. And so you kind of want to set the sensor kind of to be a little bit lower, just because you're getting so much light that if you don't, you're not going to get like a very crisp photo. And so I went to ISO 500. The sun's pretty much setting. We got there a little bit late, so it was kind of like a rushed photo shoot in general. Like we probably shot for like 30 minutes, and it was just, I was just so locked in, like I barely was even talking. Like I was just taking pictures. Like I didn't want to not get any good pictures of any of their cars and whatnot. And the guy that I shot, he does do YouTube as well. So if you guys want to give him a subscribe, go ahead. He goes by Boss JL. You could look up JLSTI. I'll probably tag his name somewhere around here, and so you guys could find him. But yeah, go ahead and give him some love, give me some love. You know, we're all here to kind of grow. And so yeah, this was an amazing spot. He's the one that kind of showed me this spot, but this is like the ideal place for photography in general. Just because if you look at the photo itself, like yeah, it's a nice angle of the car. It's always important to never really center your images. Like yeah, you can center the images slightly, you know, but I never really do. Obviously you don't want to get too extreme, you don't need to go too crazy with it, but the rule of thumb is that you're gonna have lines pretty much like imaginary lines, just like pretty much playing like tic-tac-toe right down the middle of the frame. You kind of always want to kind of keep the main subject either on the bottom line, the top line, the side line, or the other side of the line, but you kind of make these apexes, or you kind of make these crosses right across it, and there's 4 main points, and you kind of want to keep the core of your subject either on the bottom section, the top section, just pretty much just going through with all these lines. And if you're using Lightroom in general and you're working with crop, it draws those lines for you, so you could really crop these things down to the T. And that's what I always do. So I shoot full frame, and full frame, it's pretty much like the standard for professional photography. You're able to get bigger images with that, and so with that I'm able to kind of crop, and I always crop it down. So you don't need a full frame camera. Pretty much like if you want more in your image, if you're using crop sensor, just step back a little bit, you know. But I always crop down to 5x4, which is the standard for Instagram. And if you guys don't know that, you know, if you guys are editing photos on Lightroom or any app in general, just always crop down to 5.4, and you're always going to, so pretty much like all you need to do is just when you're uploading Instagram, just zoom all the way out, and the full picture that you got is going to be able to upload there, and it's going to look the best and take up the most screen when it comes to like people scrolling through your pictures. So if you guys are curious on like why my pictures, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not sure what you guys feel about my pictures, but you know, basically, like I set it up to where it's taking the most screen real estate. You know, it's gonna fit the screen the best, and you're gonna get the most picture, and you're not gonna have to choose which crop you want better. Like you're not cropping it afterhand where you got this picture you really love. It's just a picture that you really love, and it fits perfectly on the screen. You know, those basic rules there. You know, crop to 5.4. Pick really good lighting in the day. Sunset in general just gives you very dramatic lighting. It just gives you better contrast in general with your subjects. And luckily my car's dark gray, so it's pretty easy to contrast it. And the setting that we're in, and that's kind of another rule of thumb too, is that you kind of want to build a really like, not necessarily a dramatic setting, but you do want to pick backgrounds that just aesthetically have things going on in them. So like here in my room or my office, right, like I have like these pillars and these lines, right? And these are all kind of guiding lines in a way. So it kind of, obviously this is not where I'm taking pictures of cars, but this, if you look at this photo, in general, you know, you kind of have a lot of leading lines. Like it's almost insane where if you look at the photo, if you look at the pillars, just imagine those as lines, and they're all kind of pointing you down to the car itself. And so this is honestly probably one of my favorite pictures I've taken so far. And this is another rule that I kind of want to set here as well, is that there's all of these secret rules that you could kind of follow. So there's rules like framing, leading lines, crop, and kind of just finding your main points to where you want to crop your image. There's secrets like cropping to 5.4 for Instagram, you know. Shooting full frame is definitely a good plus as well, because it gives you more to kind of shoot. It gives you a wider range of lenses to choose from. You know, I think a big rule as well is just practice. Like I feel like I post pictures pretty often. Like I try to go out and shoot my car at least like once a week to maybe like once every 2 weeks. If I was really busy, like I won't shoot for like, I'll shoot like once a month to like once every 2 months, and that's not the most ideal, because every time you kind of take a long pause from shooting in general, you're gonna get really rusty. So like when I'm out there shooting, I'm thinking about all these secret rules, whether it's leading line, where I'm placing the subject. The rule of thirds is what the rule is, right? You always want to find the third of the frame and place your subject there. I'm always thinking about the lighting, and I'm always thinking about what I'm learning now, right now that I have the free time to shoot like consistently. I'm shooting at this point maybe like 2 or 3 times a week. I'm just getting these settings, like the settings is like easy. It's like night and day for me. Like I see a setting, I'm like, okay, this needs to be 500 ISO, 5.6 or 6.3 aperture at 1/30th of a second, and I just knew that just looking at the subject, placing it, framing it, and kind of a rule for that too, pretty much, so you guys could kind of have an understanding. I'm gonna go ahead and post the original photo. So this is the photo you see is the edited version. I'm gonna go ahead and put the non-edited on the screen now, and you could kind of see how far I took the photo, right? It's like 100 times darker. It's like there's nothing to really admire there. The background is like super blown up. Like you can't even see any details of like the setting beyond the parking lot, and that happens because and pretty much like that's what happens when you shoot in RAW format. Really, recommend that everyone shoots in this RAW format. So pretty much the RAW format is just gonna take in all of the possible color, all the possible light that the sensor is seeing at that moment, and then you're able to pull all of that out of the photo through post and through editing. And because if you're shooting with JPEG, pretty much the camera does all the editing for you, and you could adjust the editing slightly, but you can't really get into like a whole recovery of a photo, really. And it's a little uncomfortable, it's a little weird to shoot with at first. You're gonna feel like all your pictures are kind of boring and bland, but once you get to editing, you're gonna realize you have so much range. You could literally adjust every single pixel that you catch, and it's just a far more superior photo, or photo editing process in general. Let's go through another one of my more liked pictures in this setting. You gotta realize too, like the limits of your camera. So this is my buddy's car here, and he has, it's nice shooting a car that is literally like your twin car, because I'm so used to shooting a dark gray car in general, so I could really dial in my settings, and I don't really have to adjust too much, because when you're shooting from dark gray to white, like my GR Corolla to my STI, and luckily his brother's car was white, so I'm used to shooting white as well. Through my photo journey, my hobby journey, that when I'm shooting all these cars, you get some different colors sometimes, and it's not even that you have to set up the photos differently, it's a different editing process, because the color that you're working with is just not a color that you're normally used to contrasting or setting up in the proper way. And so this is the original photo. Let's go through like the one here. This one's slightly out of focus, but you could kind of get a concept of like what the original photo looked like and what it ended up becoming. And so here obviously I use rule of thirds, but when I'm using rule of thirds, I'm doing it in portrait mode, right? There's landscape and portrait, and I shoot portraits just because that is what takes up the most screen real estate on Instagram as well. A lot of my photography is very oriented towards taking the most advantage of what Instagram gives me. And that's just because Instagram is my main place of where I post my photos. It's my biggest account, and it's the account that's going to get the most traction for me. And so I always set everything up for Instagram. So this is cropped down to 5.4, and obviously I brought a lot of the light in. And here my settings are ISO 2500 at 94 millimeters of focal length, and aperture 4 in general. So all the way pretty much stop down completely, and then at shooting at 125, and pretty much lowering your aperture is going to be able to let more light into the lens, so that way you're able to raise your shutter speed without losing light in the photo. And the reason why I chose these settings is because at this point we're kind of getting towards the end of sunset here, that like we're getting a lot less light, and so I need the sensor to be a lot more sensitive to light. And so like a rule, if you're shooting in manual mode, first step, take your camera off of JPEG mode and switch it to RAW. Every camera is a little bit different, but that's kind of like the first rule of thumb. And then the second rule of thumb is to switch over to manual. If you guys are shooting automatic, it's going to get a great photo. It usually does a really good job, but it's kind of hard sometimes to get the camera to do exactly what you want. So if you really want to get the settings dialed in correctly for the car, and all of my settings are always dialed in for the car. I'm not worrying about the sunset, I'm only worrying about the car. If you're trying to, dial it in, sometimes they'll focus on only the sky, and your settings are all going to be for the sky, and the car is going to be really dark, and you're not going to be able to, or really blown. The car is going to be really bright or whatever, and you're not going to be really able to adjust that. So shooting in manual mode, you're able to kind of set up the settings for the car just entirely. You're able to really control the exact place that you want to be. And I always kind of shoot, if you notice that all of my photos are a little bit blown out, I always try to kind of overexpose my photos to let a little bit more light into the camera. And that's intentional, just because when I'm editing, it kind of gives me more leeway of like where I could take the light, because you could always take light away, but sometimes if you don't capture all the light, you're not going to be able to really add light in. And so I would rather have a super bright photo than a really dark one. Always rule of thirds, always have your leading lines. Like this parking lot was honestly probably yeah, it's just a really solid spot. And I'm really glad that he showed me it, just because there's so much that you can do as far as the leading lines. Like it's like on this photo, it's the parking spots, they're all pointing to his car. And so like it's not, and that's kind of the secret of photography. It's like there's all these hidden rules that the rule of thirds just aesthetically looks better, and then you have all of these secret lines that are just pointing you to the subject. So like you're looking at the car and you really like the photo, but then you're not even realizing all of the mental things, especially people that don't take photo theory in general. Like if you're not paying attention to those things, or a lot of people don't realize why they like a photo. A lot of people, it's funny because a lot of people compliment me on my pictures, and they're always like, they always tell me how simplistic or how simple my photos are, but for whatever reason, like they just really enjoy it. They really love the setup of it. Like it's just like, it's interesting. But I always get all these compliments like that, where like the photos are so simple, but yet something about them is just really tasteful, and that's just what it is. Like half of the times, like I'll shoot with all these rules like just on iPhone, and you're able to kind of pull all of those type of stops on iPhone, if you kind of just have these same rules. And so we'll go through one more photo, because this video is kind of getting a little bit long. So pretty much this is the second shot, or this is the second spot of where we were shooting. And so this one is shot at ISO 160, because we're shooting pretty much not midday, but almost midday. The sun is at one of its stronger points. It's at 42 millimeter focal length. Again, 42 millimeters. And I'm just using the zoom lens, right? I don't have like these primes. I'm not just carrying around a 42 millimeter prime. It's just a lens, and for whatever reason, like when I'm zooming in, it just looks really tasteful at 42 millimeters. This is f4.0, so I'm letting the most amount of light in. Sometimes on hard daylight days like this, you could really bring that you could bring the f-stop to 11. I did 4.0 just to kind of give a little bit of separation, and that's another part of it too. There's a lot of things about photography that we can kind of get into, and these videos can go on forever. But I put f4.0 at my shutter speed at 1/2000. So when you're shooting manual, my biggest thing, or the first part, and you gotta kind of think about it like a film lens. So the first part that you're thinking about when you're shooting on film is your ISO. You're trying to figure out what time of the day you're going to be shooting. And so with the lens, or with film, if you're going to be shooting midday, you're going to put like a Kodak Gold 200, which is 200 ISO, because you're going to have a lot of harsh light. But then if you're going to shoot like during sunset, you could put in a Portra 400, which is 400 ISO, because at sunset it's going to be more sensitive to light. The same way the sensor is sensitive to light, the film is sensitive to light. And you're going to let in a little bit more light because you have a little bit less light to work with, because these are the less harsher times of the day. And these photos were kind of midday, mid peak harshness of light. So it's funny because we were shooting, and I could tell that my buddy Sal, he was a little skeptical about the spot or how the photos were come out. I think they came out really great, just because editing in general, you're able to really pull some things out. Like, let me show you original. So here's original. You can kind of see it's a little bit bland. You get a lot of detail, but then you crop it down to 5:4. You really bring out the editing. You really get most of the colors that you really want out of it. It really warms up the image, and it really just gives it this really beautiful kind of scenic film artsy look to a kind of a car photo, and that's the importance of shooting with raw files, because if you're shooting JPEGs, you're never going to really fully get the colors that you see on the screen right now, and that's the importance there. And so I kind of want to start or keep it there where these are kind of the main rules. And if you look at the photo too, you have all of these leading lines, and the leading lines are just like as simple as the curve on the street. You see how they have that lifted curve, that curve on the street there, what you're looking at as far as like a leading line goes. And so that's kind of a rule that I always follow. I always try to incorporate leading lines. I always try to incorporate rule of thirds. And you don't have to go out there and look for it, but it's always a good thing to kind of keep in mind, because you could keep things as simple as just shooting in a hanger, but as long as you have your rule of thirds is on point, and you have some set of some type of dramatics, whether it's a leading line or just you kind of picked a kind of more interesting background, or it's even as simple as just moving the car to a more interesting place. Like sometimes if you parked your car somewhere, but then you notice that there's like a cool like sign a couple parking spots down, and it's just moving your car to that cool sign and getting the sign and the car, like kind of just thinking a little bit more artistically, thinking a little bit more deeper in like what the background could look like. Because obviously like these photos, we picked very great locations. We picked locations that are beautiful regardless. Like you don't need to necessarily even like put too much effort in trying to get the background dialed in, because the location is just beautiful. Like this is Malibu Beach in California. It's a vacation spot for a lot of people, and you see why. Like it's just there's something about it. It's peaceful. You get water, you get sky, you get some plants, and that's kind of like as far as like the framing for me goes, or the positioning for me. It's like I wanted to kind of stay next to these bushes just to kind of get a little bit more greenage in, so that way it's not as just like street and ocean. It's like street, ocean, a little bit of plants, a little bit of that type of stuff. And that's just the stuff that I think about, and that's just this, and that's kind of, I feel like, what sets my pictures apart a little bit. Obviously I'm not saying I'm the best photographer, but at the same time I feel like I do notice that a lot of people kind of see my pictures as simple. Like I don't try to go too far as editing goes. You never really want to go too far. I always just try to make sure that the pictures in general follow all of those basic rules, and so that way you just have the most put together framing of a photo in general. And so I hope you guys find this a little bit useful. This one went a little bit longer, but I hope I try to cover a lot of stuff, so that way you guys can kind of at least think about these things. I'll probably make more pictures or more videos like this in the future, more tutorials, like more basics of like how to take better photos, and I will probably pick up on the next part whenever I end up doing it, kind of building on what I just talked about too, because there's so much more things that we can kind of get into as far as photography goes. And this is me trying to cram in like the first 3 classes I took into like one whole video, and then maybe we can go through like some history or some more like editing sides of things, so that way you guys can kind of get better at that type of stuff, and you guys could kind of get more comfortable behind the camera, and maybe we can go through some gear and go through all of those things. And another kind of advice that I'm going to give here is going to be just in general, like if you're taking photos and let's say you don't want to shoot manual, or you're shooting manual and it's just not working for you, you're not understanding like the concepts of it. It takes practice, and I feel like if you just want to just have a good shoot and not have to worry about all these settings, you could always just go switch back to automatic. Still shooting in RAW though. I think always shoot in RAW files and have Lightroom there to edit. I use Lightroom Classic. You could get more comfortable with the newer one. Essentially, they both do the same thing. But if you look at like my camera here, if my camera has all these dials, but I'm trying to see if I can get it in focus here. But here are all the dials. I'm set to manual, which is the M, but they have they have aperture priority, shutter priority, and picture priority, or I think that's picture priority. I don't know what the P stands for. I'm not gonna lie to you. I used to know, I just forget. But aperture priority is a good way to start too. So with aperture priority, all you gotta do is set your aperture its own dial pretty much, and so that's kind of what's gonna kind of all you're really focusing there is if you want the background to be a little bit separated because if you want that blur, then you want to lower your aperture. If you want more of the image in focus, then you raise the aperture, and that's all you do. You lower it based on how much blur you want, or you raise it based on how much detail you want. And with that, it'll set up your ISO for you. It'll set up your shutter speed for you. So all you really need to do is just focus on getting the proper framing, the proper lines, the proper background, the proper composition, and it'll set everything else for you pretty much. And all you need to do is worry about the aperture. And that's kind of where I started when I was learning how to do photography. And then eventually, once I got more comfortable, once I started to understand like what all the different ISOs were doing, what all the different shutter speeds were doing, and I got more comfortable with the camera in general, I just switched to manual. I switched back to manual, and then I was able to really, enjoy manual for what it is, because I think manual in general is just the best way to get the exact photo that you want. But aperture priority is a little bit better than just full automatic, just because you're able to at least control like what you're focusing in on, and that way, at least with that, you're also able, the camera will most likely compensate correctly for whatever you're focusing on. So you don't necessarily have to be on full manual. You could just be on aperture priority. It's not going to be exactly, you're not going to be able to dial it in exactly, but it'll get pretty damn close, and I think for the most part, if you're shooting in that format, you're not going to be upset with the outcome. And I shot like that for maybe a couple years before I got comfortable with manual, and I feel like that's a good place to start. Anyways, I'll end it here. Thank you guys for watching. I know that this is going to be a much longer video than my normal videos. I'm glad you guys could hang out with me here. I'm hoping you guys are using this, and then if you guys are, or even just like, because the thing is like, it's always fun to work with different people. It's always fun to take pictures. I hope that this kind of just gets you to want to go out there and learn the skill for yourself, and really, enjoy having the freedom of just taking your own pictures. It's always a great thing to just go out there and capture these memories. And you could apply these rules not just to car photography, but just to your normal photography in general, whether it's pictures of your family, pictures of your kids, pictures of your dogs, pictures around the house, or pictures of just views, or like landscapes and things that you're seeing if you're on vacation, whatever, like these are rules that are going to work for anything. It's always important to have those things. And some good practices too, that I learned in school in general is just give yourself assignments. Like, we had literally like weeks in class where our only responsibility was to shoot with leading lines, so that way you're able to understand and look for those leading lines in everything that you see. And same thing, like there's weeks where we shot only in rule of thirds, and that was our main focus. We just made sure our subjects were on the lines of the rule of thirds, and those things like that. And there's tons of photography pages, and there's tons of photography tutorials in general. And so, yeah, I hope you guys practice this. I hope you guys enjoy. If you guys like this a lot, please let me know down below. Please like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.